The mining station floated in the darkness of space, cold, silent, forgotten by most of the galaxy. Deep inside the station, far below the work floors, was a locked door with rusted bolts and blinking red lights. Behind that door, in a tiny metal cell, lay a girl. Her skin pale and her eyes glowing softly in the dark. She was not human, but she wasn't fully alien either. She was something made in secret, something the galaxy wanted to forget. Her name was Lyrie, though no one called her that anymore. To the guards, she was just Specimen 9. For 10 years, she had lived alone in that small cold room, with nothing but a thin blanket and a hard floor. She was fed through a slot in the wall, never spoken to, never touched. Each day felt the same, and each night colder than the last. But that day something changed. A new worker had arrived on the station. He was human, tall, quiet, with kind eyes and a tired face. His name was Jack, and he was here to fix the broken machines in the lower levels. Jack heard the whispers first. He was checking a power line near the old storage hall when he paused. He thought he heard something. Soft breathing? Or was it crying? He leaned closer to a vent, and the sound became clear. It was a girl's voice, whispering something over and over. Cold. So cold. Jack blinked, confused. This part of the station was not supposed to have anyone. When he asked the security guard, the man growled, "Stay away from cell 9. That thing is dangerous." Jack didn't understand, but he couldn't stop thinking about that voice. That night, when his shift ended, he walked back through the quiet halls. He stopped at the locked door, the one marked, restricted. He placed his ear to the metal, and again he heard the soft whispering. He took a risk, leaned down near the vent, and said softly, "Hello? Is someone in there?" There was silence, then a soft gasp, and then the voice replied, "You're human." Jack felt a chill down his spine. "Yes," he whispered back. "I'm Jack. What's your name?" There was a pause, as if the voice had forgotten how to answer that question. Then came a shy reply, "Lyrie, I think." That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about that soft voice, about the fear in it, and how lonely it sounded. The next day, he brought an extra sandwich and slipped it through the food slot during his break. "Thank you," the voice said, and it almost broke his heart. Days passed, and Jack kept visiting her, always in secret. He told her stories about Earth, the oceans, the sun, and trees. She had never seen those things, but she listened quietly, her face pressed against the cold metal wall. She told him small things too, how the light in her cell never turned off, how her hands shook all the time, and how she hadn't felt warm in years. Jack began to wonder why she was kept here. She didn't sound dangerous. She sounded scared. One evening, she asked him something strange. "Do humans sleep beside each other?" Jack smiled a little. "Sometimes, when they're close." There was silence again. Then a tiny voice whispered, "Can I sleep in your bed?" Jack's heart stopped. Not because of the question, but because of the pain in her voice. She didn't mean it like a child asking for comfort. She meant it like someone who had never felt safe. Not even once in her life. He wanted to say yes, to break down the door, to carry her out right then. But he couldn't, not yet. Security was tight, and if anyone knew what he was doing, she would be taken away forever. Still, he made her a promise. "One day, Lyrie," he said. "You won't need to be cold again, I promise." Just then, the red lights outside her cell flickered. A security drone floated by, scanning the hallway. Jack hid in the shadows, holding his breath. He realized time was running out. He had to find a way to free her, because no one should have to shiver alone for 10 years. And no one should have to whisper through metal walls just to feel human. The next morning, Jack walked through the lower hallways with heavy steps. His hands held tools, but his mind was full of Lyrie's voice. That soft whisper. "Can I sleep in your bed?" played again and again in his head like a broken music box. He had never heard such loneliness in a single sentence. He passed by security, nodding at the guards, hiding his thoughts. They didn't know what he was planning. Not yet. Jack wasn't even sure what his plan was. But he knew one thing. Lyrie needed to get out of that cell. When his shift ended, Jack returned to the vent near her door. He crouched down, pretending to tighten wires, and whispered, "Lyrie, it's me." No reply. His heart sank a little, until he heard a quiet breath. Then her voice came through the vent, softer than ever. "You came back," she said. "Of course I did," Jack replied, smiling. "Did you eat the sandwich?" "It was the best thing I ever had," she whispered. "Really? It was just peanut butter." "What's peanut butter?" she asked. Jack laughed quietly, but then paused, remembering how little she had seen of the real world. Over the next few nights, Jack told her everything. About rain and snow, about pets and music, about pillows and sunlight. Lyrie listened closely, her glowing eyes closed as she imagined each thing. She asked questions like a child, but her voice was always careful, always small, like she feared being heard. One night, Jack whispered, "How did you end up here, Lyrie?" There was a long silence. Then she replied, "They built me, kind of." His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "My blood. It's mixed, part human, part alien, from old experiments," she said slowly. "They said I was a mistake, too weak, too emotional." Jack clenched his fist. To him, she didn't sound like a mistake at all. She sounded like someone who had been punished just for being different. "They tested me for years," she continued, "then locked me away when I cried." "You cried?" Jack asked gently. "They didn't like it," she said. "Weapons shouldn't cry." Jack leaned his head against the cold metal wall. "You're not a weapon, Lyrie, you're a person." Her breath caught, like she hadn't heard that before. Then she said something even softer. "I wish I could sleep in a bed, even just once." Jack couldn't stand it anymore. The next day, he started drawing a map of the station's lower levels. He copied camera routes, counted guard shifts, and checked for old maintenance tunnels. His plan was risky, but not impossible. He also brought her more things: a small soft cloth, some warm socks, a piece of a broken music player that still played one gentle tune. She kept them hidden under her blanket, clutching them like treasure. He never saw her face, but he imagined her smiling. But one evening, as Jack whispered a bedtime story through the vent, he heard a new sound. Footsteps, fast and heavy. He stood up quickly, hiding his tools, just as a guard turned the corner. "Hey!" the guard barked. "What are you doing near cell 9? "Checking the vent," Jack lied calmly. "There's a temperature drop in the system. Might be a leak." The guard narrowed his eyes but nodded. "Be quick." Jack watched him walk away, then whispered urgently into the vent, "We're running out of time." That night he didn't sleep. He stayed awake, drawing plans, checking escape routes, watching the stars outside his window. He couldn't let them take her away again. He had to act soon. But the next day something was wrong. When he returned to the vent, there was no voice. He whispered, "Lyrie," again and again, but there was only silence. Panic filled his chest. Did they move her? Did someone find out? He rushed to the food slot and saw nothing inside. Not even crumbs. He waited, listened, whispered, but still nothing. His hands shook as he leaned against the wall, feeling helpless. Suddenly, from the far corner of the hallway, came a faint voice, not through the vent this time, but directly into his ear. "Jack!" He turned, startled, but saw no one. Then he realized it came from his small wrist communicator. The signal was weak, almost broken. "Jack!" the voice repeated. "They're moving me. Help!" His heart pounded. They were taking her away. Without thinking, Jack grabbed his tools and ran down the hallway, deeper into the restricted zone. He didn't know what he'd find, or how he'd stop them, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let her disappear again. Not after she finally found the courage to speak. Not after her voice, once hidden in the dark, had finally reached his heart. Jack ran through the lower levels, his boots slamming on cold metal floors. Alarms hadn't started yet, but he could feel something was wrong. His heart beat faster with every step. Lyree's voice still echoed in his communicator, broken and weak. "They're moving me, help." He reached the hallway outside cell 9 and froze. The door was open, wide, and empty. The inside was dark, the blanket gone, the vent cover removed. She was no longer there. "No," Jack whispered, panic rising. He turned sharply and looked around, searching for any sign. Then he noticed something on the floor. A small cloth, the one he gave her. It was torn, like she had dropped it on purpose. Jack picked it up and clenched his jaw. They were taking her somewhere, maybe to the lab, maybe off station. And if he waited, it would be too late. He rushed to the command panels in the maintenance wing. There, hidden behind old boxes, was a control pad no one used anymore. He tapped into the station's old system, one he had quietly mapped during his repair jobs. It wasn't full access, but it was enough. A small screen blinked, showing a moving signal, Cell 9's ID tag. Being transferred to Sector 17. Sector 17 was a closed lab near the ship docks, shut down years ago after a power accident. Now it seemed it was back in use. Jack opened his map and traced a route. He couldn't go through the main halls, they were guarded, but there was an old air duct that led through the fuel tunnels. Small, dirty, dangerous, but fast. He had to move quickly, but he also had to prepare Lyree. She might be weak, confused, or scared. She might not even understand what he was trying to do. Jack sent one short message through the communicator, hoping it would reach her. "Don't speak. Just listen. I'm coming. Be ready." Then he packed supplies into his tool bag, an energy cutter, a warm cloak, a med patch, and a small power cell for emergency light. He slipped into the fuel shaft, crawling through pipes and steam, the heat burning his arms. His only thought was her voice, so soft, so small, yet it reached deeper than any scream. After what felt like an hour, he reached a vent near Sector 17. He peered through the crack and saw them, 2 guards standing near a sealed door, weapons at their side. Inside, he could see Lyree through a small window, sitting on a metal table, arms folded around herself. She looked smaller than ever. Her glow had dimmed, her shoulders shaking, but she was awake, and her eyes searched the room, like she was waiting. Jack studied the hallway and smiled slightly. This was his moment. He activated a nearby alarm in the opposite direction. Red lights blinked and a siren echoed down the corridor. The guards looked at each other and ran toward the sound, leaving the door unguarded. Jack dropped from the vent and sprinted toward the door. The lock was complex, but he had studied it. In seconds, he sliced through the panel with the energy cutter and the door slid open. Lyree looked up, her eyes wide, glowing just a little more. "Jack?" she breathed, as if she couldn't believe it was really him. He ran to her and threw the cloak over her shoulders. "We're getting out of here," he whispered. She trembled as she stood, her legs weak, but she nodded. "I knew you'd come," she whispered back. "I made a promise," Jack said, helping her walk. They slipped back into the maintenance shafts, crawling together in silence. Every sound made them freeze. Every distant footstep made their hearts jump, but they moved forward, one corner at a time. At last, they reached the old shuttle bay, long and used, full of dust and broken tools. Jack had secretly repaired a service pod weeks ago, just in case. He helped Lyree into the seat, wrapped her in another blanket, and began to power it up. The engine hummed quietly, old but alive. Lyrie looked around, her eyes wide. "Is this real?" she asked, her voice shaking. Jack looked at her, smiled, and said, "As real as it gets." But before they could launch, a red light blinked on the panel. Detected. Someone had noticed the ship activating. Jack grabbed the control stick. "We have to go now." The pod roared to life and lifted off the bay floor. Security forces stormed into the hangar just as the ship sped out into space. Shots fired behind them, but the shields held. Lyrie cried out and buried her face into Jack's shoulder. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." As the stars opened before them, Lyrie's small hand clutched his, her fingers cold but alive. Her voice came again, quiet, but stronger than ever. "Can I sleep here? Beside you?" Jack squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, you can." He looked ahead, toward the nearest rogue moon, a place where no one would find them, a place where maybe, just maybe, she could feel warm again. The small ship sped through deep space, stars sliding past the glass like glowing rivers. Jack sat in the pilot's seat, breathing hard, hands tight on the controls. Lyrie sat beside him, wrapped in the thick blanket, her eyes wide but calm. For the first time in 10 years, she was no longer in a cage. But freedom was not safety, not yet. The ship's warning lights blinked softly. They were being tracked. A signal had been sent the moment they launched. Jack's jaw clenched. "We'll make it," he muttered. "We're almost to the rogue moon." Lyrie looked at him, her voice soft. "Will they come for me?" Jack nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "But I won't let them take you back." They reached the moon after 2 hours, landing near a hidden station Jack knew from long ago. It was built by smugglers, now abandoned except for a few outlaws and wanderers. Jack had helped repair its power systems in the past, and the place still owed him a favor. As the pod's doors opened, the cold wind hit them, but it was not the bitter cold of Cell 9. It was fresh, open, real. Lyrie stepped out slowly, her feet touching real ground for the first time in years. She smiled faintly, a tear slipping from her eye. "I can feel the wind," she whispered. They entered the small base and were greeted by Marlowe, an old human engineer with a robot leg and sharp eyes. He stared at Lyrie, confused. "You brought her here?" he asked Jack. "That's the thing from the mining station." "She's not a thing," Jack said firmly. "She's a girl, and she needs help." Marlowe grumbled, but nodded. "Fine, one night. That's all I can offer. After that, they'll be on us." Jack agreed, and they settled into one of the back rooms. It had an old bed, dusty but soft. Lyrie curled into it, her hands clutching the blanket tightly. She looked at Jack as he sat nearby. "Is this what sleeping feels like?" she asked. Jack chuckled softly. "Almost. Give it a few minutes." She smiled and whispered, "Can you stay close?" He nodded. "I'll stay right here." That night, Jack slept sitting up, watching the door, but peace didn't last. The next morning, a loud knock echoed through the room. Marlowe burst in, face pale. "They found you," he said. "You need to hide her now." Jack pulled Lyrie to her feet, but she was weak. Her glow was fading again, her knees shaking. Jack touched her forehead. It was cold. "She's getting worse," he muttered. Marlowe led them to the back of the station where a hidden chamber waited. But before they could enter, the outer doors of the base exploded open. Armed guards poured in, led by a tall alien in black armor. His voice echoed through the hall. "Return the girl, and we'll let the rest of you live." Jack pushed Lyrie into the chamber and locked the door. He turned and faced the soldiers with his hands raised. "I'm the only one here," he said calmly. But they didn't believe him. Two guards grabbed him and slammed him against the wall. "Where is Specimen 9? The leader growled. Jack didn't answer, so they dragged him to the lab room and tied him to a chair. An alien doctor entered next, tall and cold, with eyes like ice. "You made a mistake, human," he said. "She was never meant to be loved, only studied." Jack glared at him. "She's not a science project. She's a person." The doctor shook his head. "She's a weapon, broken and unfinished. We gave her feelings only to measure pain." Suddenly, the walls trembled, lights flickered, machines cracked, and then, a soft humming sound filled the air. Lyrie had escaped the chamber. Her body glowed bright gold, her eyes burning with light. She stood in the doorway, trembling but fierce. Her voice shook the room. "You will not hurt him." The soldiers turned their weapons on her, but she raised her hands, and a wave of energy exploded from her chest. Machines fried, glass shattered, and the guards fell to the ground. The doctor screamed and tried to run, but Lyrie's glow surrounded him. He froze in place, trapped in her power. Jack blinked in awe. She was small, fragile, and scared. But at that moment, she was stronger than anyone in the room. She rushed to Jack, her energy fading fast. He caught her as she collapsed. "I didn't want to hurt them," she whispered. "But I had to protect you." Jack held her tightly. "You did good," he whispered. "You saved us." Marlowe returned, shocked by the destruction. "Remind me never to mess with that girl," he muttered. They escaped the base and returned to the pod. Jack looked at Lyrie, her face pale but peaceful. "We'll find somewhere safer," he promised. "Somewhere no one will find you." She smiled weakly. "As long as you're there, I'm not afraid." The stars outside the pod window twinkled like tiny fires. Jack sat beside Lyrie, gently wiping her forehead with a cloth. She was pale again, her glow almost gone. The power burst she had used to save him had drained her deeply. The pod flew through empty space, far from the station, far from any planet. They had no real destination, just one goal, to keep Lyrie safe. Jack looked at the small map on the screen. There was a forgotten medical outpost 2 hours away, hidden behind an asteroid field. He sent out a silent signal, hoping someone would answer. Lyrie stirred and opened her eyes slowly. "Where are we?" she whispered. "Somewhere between danger and freedom," Jack replied, smiling gently. She gave a soft chuckle, but it turned into a cough. Jack reached for the power cell in his bag. He connected it to the ship's life support panel and adjusted the energy flow. The lights turned a soft gold, the air warmer. Lyrie let out a breath, her skin glowing just a little again. "I like this color," she said, looking around. "It suits you," Jack replied. "You shine better when you're not in a cage." The ship beeped, and a voice crackled through the comms. "This is Outpost 9 Delta? Who's requesting landing?" Jack leaned forward. "This is Jack Holt. I have a young bioform with failing energy. She needs medical help, urgently." There was a pause, then, "Coordinates received. Prepare to dock." The pod landed softly on a silver platform surrounded by dark cliffs and purple skies. The outpost was small but alive. A female medic named Dr. Rilsa met them at the hatch, her face stern but kind. She looked at Lyrie with wide eyes. "What species is she?" "Half human, half alien," Jack said. "They built her, then locked her away." Rilsa frowned but said nothing. "Bring her in," she ordered. "We'll see what we can do." Inside, the room was warm, filled with soft humming lights and quiet machines. Lyrie lay on a soft bed for the first time in her life. She looked around, confused. "Is this where people go when they're cared for?" Jack nodded. "Yes. This is a place for healing, not hurting." Rilsa connected Lyrie to a glowing machine that scanned her body. Her energy levels are unstable, she said. The human cells are fighting the alien side. She was never meant to survive long like this. Jack's heart dropped. Can you fix it? Rilsa shook her head slowly. I can't fix her, but maybe I can help her live longer if she rests, if she's not afraid all the time. Jack sat beside Lyrie and took her hand. Then that's what I'll do. I'll make sure she's never afraid again. The days passed slowly. Lyrie grew a little stronger. She walked around the small outpost, always with Jack nearby. They ate meals together, listened to music, and watched the strange sky from the balcony. She would press her head against his shoulder and whisper things like, "This feels like dreaming," or, "I didn't know touch could be soft." Jack began building her a real room in the back of the outpost. Not just a place to sleep, but a home. He found old furniture, fixed the heater, and even hung a small picture of Earth he had kept in his bag. When he brought her to see it, Lyrie stood still for a long moment. Then she walked to the bed, sat on the edge and smiled. "Is this my bed?" Jack nodded. "Yes, it's yours." She lay back slowly, feeling the softness under her small frame. Then she looked at him and whispered, "Can I still sleep in yours?" Jack smiled, not with amusement, but with deep care. "Whenever you want," he said. "My bed is yours too." That night, they lay side by side in the small room. Lyrie curled against him, her head resting on his chest. She whispered, "I don't hear the cold anymore." Jack closed his eyes and whispered back, "That's because you're safe now." But peace never lasted long. One morning, Rilsa came running into the room, her face pale. "They've put a bounty on her," she said. "The company that made her, they want her back." Jack stood up. "How long until they find us?" "Maybe a day," she said. "Maybe hours." Jack looked at Lyrie, still asleep, wrapped in soft blankets. She looked like any other girl now. Not a weapon, not an experiment, just someone who wanted warmth. "I won't let them take her," Jack said. Rilsa nodded. "Then we fight." That evening, Jack installed new locks, set traps near the landing zone, and charged his old rifle. He stood at the door all night, watching the stars, waiting. Behind him, Lyrie stirred and sat up. She looked at him, her voice quiet. "You're still guarding me." Jack looked over his shoulder and smiled. "Always." She climbed out of bed, walked over and leaned against him. Her glow was soft, like a candle. "I don't want to run anymore," she whispered. "You won't," he promised. "Not while I'm breathing." The sky above the outpost turned deep purple as evening came. The wind carried a strange silence. Jack stood by the main door, his rifle resting on the railing. He hadn't slept in 2 nights, but he didn't care. Inside, Lyrie sat on the floor, wrapping a soft scarf around her shoulders. She hummed a quiet tune Jack had taught her. It was simple, from Earth, something about stars and peace. But danger was closer than ever. Rilsa entered the room holding a data chip, her face grim. "I scanned her DNA again," she said to Jack, "and compared it to old science files." Jack turned to her, eyebrows raised. "What did you find?" "She's not just a failed weapon," Rilsa whispered. "She's something much more." Jack stepped closer, listening carefully. Rilsa continued. "She was designed by an old coalition that believed in peace between species. They wanted to create someone with empathy, someone who could connect both human and alien minds." Jack looked at Lyrie, who now sat quietly, watching them both. "She was built to understand," Rilsa said. "But when the project failed, others called her a mistake, because she cried, because she felt." Jack felt his chest tighten. "She wasn't a failure," he said slowly. "She was the only thing they got right." Lyrie stood up, her voice soft. "So, I was made to feel pain. Rilsa shook her head. No, you were made to feel everything. Love, kindness, fear, even joy. Lyrie took a deep breath. She wasn't broken. She was human in ways even humans had forgotten. Suddenly, alarms rang across the outpost, red lights flashing. They're here, Jack said, gripping his weapon. Rilsa ran to the defense panel, scanning the skies. One ship, small but fast, mercenaries. Jack turned to Lyrie. I want you to stay in the back room. But Lyrie shook her head. No, she said, her voice stronger now. I won't hide anymore. He hesitated, then nodded. Stay close to me, then. Outside, the mercenary ship landed on the rocky ground. 3 figures stepped out. Tall, armored, holding energy rifles. The leader removed his helmet, revealing a scarred alien face with red eyes. You have something that belongs to the company, he said, his voice cold. Jack stepped forward. She's not property. She's a person. She's a lab product, the mercenary said, raising his gun. You can't protect her forever. Before Jack could reply, Lyrie walked beside him, her small hand glowing faintly. I'm not yours, she said to the mercenary. I belong to no one. The mercenary laughed. You think that voice matters? You were made to obey. But then, the ground beneath them began to vibrate. Lyrie's eyes shimmered like silver light, her body calm but focused. She stepped forward, her glow growing with every heartbeat. I was made to feel, she said. And that makes me stronger than you'll ever be. Jack moved to stop her, but Rilsa held his arm. Let her choose, she whispered. Lyrie raised both hands. She didn't attack, didn't strike. Instead, she let her energy rise like warmth from a fire, surrounding the mercenaries in soft golden light. They froze, eyes wide, not in pain, but in silence. The mercenary leader dropped his weapon, his hands shaking. What is this? He said, voice trembling. Lyrie looked into his eyes. This is what you were afraid of. Not destruction, but understanding. The other mercenary stepped back, afraid to even blink. Jack slowly lowered his weapon, stunned. Rilsa whispered, she's rewriting them. Not with violence, but with emotion. Then Lyrie fell to her knees, weak, her glow fading again. Jack rushed to catch her, holding her tightly. You did it, he whispered. You stopped them. The mercenaries turned and left, silently returning to their ship. Not ordered, not forced, just changed. They flew away into the sky, without a fight, without a word. Later that night, Jack carried Lyrie back to her bed. He laid her down gently, placing the soft blanket over her. Her breathing was steady, but her voice was faint. I felt everything, she whispered. Their fear, their hate, but also their memories, their regrets. Jack brushed her hair back. You're amazing, he said. You changed their hearts. Lyrie smiled weakly. I don't want to fight, she said. I just want to stay here with you. You will, Jack said. I'll make sure of it. Rilsa stepped in, holding a small device. I think I can stabilize her, she said. If I align the energy centers in her cells, she won't burn out anymore. Jack nodded. Do it, he said. Give her a chance to live, not just survive. Hours later, after the procedure was done, Lyrie opened her eyes. For the first time, she didn't look fragile. She looked peaceful. Jack sat beside her, holding her hand. She looked at him and said softly, Can I sleep in your bed again tonight? Jack smiled. You never have to ask. And as the stars glowed above, she closed her eyes. Not afraid, not alone, but finally whole. The morning sun rose slowly over the quiet rogue moon. Its soft golden light touched the outpost windows, Inside, warmth filled the small room where Lyrie slept. Her face was calm, her breath steady, her glow soft like the light of a distant star. Jack sat beside her, not moving, just watching. He had stayed up all night not to guard, but to be near her. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something deeper. It was peace. Lyrie stirred, slowly waking up. Her eyes opened and met his. "Still here?" she whispered. "Always," Jack replied with a tired smile. She sat up, touched her chest, and looked surprised. "I feel strong," she said. "Not burning, not fading." Jack nodded. Rilsa said the energy realignment worked. Lyrie looked down at her hands, glowing gently but not shaking. "I feel like I belong here," she said. "Like this body is mine now." Jack stood up and opened the window shades. Light poured into the room, touching the walls, the bed, the floor. Lyrie reached her hand toward it, her fingers dancing in the golden glow. "This is the first time I've seen morning," she whispered. "And it's the first time I've seen you smile without fear," Jack replied. Later that day, Jack walked around the outpost making repairs. The mercenaries hadn't returned, and no signals came from space. It was quiet, truly quiet, for the first time in weeks. Rilsa approached him near the old solar panels. "I've been thinking," she said. "She's not just a girl or an experiment. She's something new." Jack nodded. "She's what we were all afraid to be," he said. "Open, feeling gentle. She's more human than most of us," Rilsa added. Jack glanced back at the room where Lyrie now stayed. "I'm going to build her a home," he said suddenly. Rilsa raised her brow. "A real home?" Jack smiled. "Yeah, with her own bed, her own space, her own stars." Days passed, and the outpost became quieter. Jack gathered old supplies, wood, parts from broken ships, and tools. He built a small cabin just beyond the main building, near a ridge that overlooked the valley of glowing rocks. Lyrie came every day to watch, sometimes helping, sometimes just sitting in the sun. One evening, as the sky turned orange and pink, Jack finished the last piece. A wooden door. He opened it and stepped back. "It's done," he said. Lyrie walked forward, slowly, and looked inside. It had everything. A soft bed, shelves with handmade figures, a table with books, a window with a view of the stars. She walked around, touching each thing carefully, gently, like it might vanish. Then she turned to Jack. "This is mine. All yours," he said. Tears formed in her eyes, but she smiled through them. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Yes, you do," Jack said, walking toward her. "More than anyone." That night, Jack sat outside the cabin, staring at the stars. Lyrie came out, wrapped in a light blanket, her bare feet soft against the ground. She stood beside him and looked at the stars too. "There's something I want to say," she whispered. Jack turned to her. "What is it?" She looked down, then met his eyes. "Out of all the beds in the galaxy, I choose yours." Jack's heart skipped. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Because it's the only place I ever felt real." He reached out his hand, and she took it. Together they walked back inside. That night they shared the bed not because of fear, not because of cold, but because of choice. No alarms rang, no threats came, no voices ordered them to run. Just silence, warm and safe. In the morning, Lyrie woke up in Jack's arms. She stretched, yawned, and smiled. "I had a dream," she said. "Yeah? What about? A house, a garden, maybe a small pet?" Jack laughed softly. "We can build that too." From that day on, Lyrie stopped whispering. She spoke with a clear voice, gentle but strong. She learned how to cook, how to fix things, how to laugh without flinching. She even painted the cabin walls with glowing colors from the valley. They never left the moon. They didn't need to, because when you find your bed, the one where your heart is safe, you don't search for another. And every night, just before sleep, Lyrie would smile at Jack and say the same words, "Can I sleep in your bed?" And Jack would always reply, "You already do."